And welcome everyone to an incredibly live Google Hangout broadcast. I'm joined by my intrepid co-host Rebecca Cope and the intrepid Rod Class. Welcome to this incredible webinar that's going to be made available to the universe and beyond, because we are here talking law, sovereignty, and about the corrupt courts and how high the corruption goes, and what it is that you, the individual, can do just by reading a book. So Rebecca and Rod, welcome to this incredible beginning of the weekend in which we are going to be filming Rod's live seminar. We're going to be making a series of documentaries. And we are here with New Earth Nation, and we are also part of the New Earth Nation Tribunal on Natural Justice, as we spoke about in the first few series here. So Rebecca and Rod, welcome. And
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I'll start off since I have that privilege.
Yep.
Hello, everybody who is at
and hi, everyone live.
Hi, everybody who's live listening to the center. We had some really amazing opportunities to get to know some of the people who are coming today. And one of the things that was very clear to me is that there are a number of people who have already done the investigative work that we will be able to take before this tribunal that we're organizing to make sure that we begin to hold these judges and prosecutors accountable, who are just simply taking our freedoms and creating these opportunities to steal the federal funding. And we have proof of this in so many different ways now, as we're dealing with these corporations posing as governments, and we're finding that evidence. Some of the evidence I saw today as people brought their paperwork in, getting ready for this show, just absolutely goes right down to the heart of what we're dealing with here, as we're proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that the corporations have taken over as de facto governments. And so we do need to wake up and start taking our own responsibilities serious. And that's what the people who are gathering at this seminar are doing. So we're really looking forward to coming up with more than one strategy that we're putting together through New Earth Nation and the Law Academy, so that we can begin to help those people who are willing to do this work, to give them opportunities to learn what they need to do to start holding the judges and the prosecutors and the courts and the municipalities and the others who are doing these things against the people. We intend to hold them accountable. So that's partly what we're doing here with Rod, and just want to say welcome to everybody who is here. And I know you're going to really want to dig into the information that's going to be presented on during this seminar, real solid answers to what we can do to start holding these people accountable. And here's our key investigative, I don't even want to call him a reporter, he's our investigative sleuth who has done so much to prepare us all to be able to do this work. So here's Rod.
Thank you. This seminar that we're doing this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, we are pulling all class of people. We have been contacted, myself, Carl, has been contacted by retired federal agents. This is what's amazing, is that they have been listening to AIB radio. They've been going back and doing the research of what we are bringing forward. They're going back in and checking the congressional records that we're talking about. And they're going back in and saying, my God, this man's right. They're going back in and they're checking the foreclosures. They're running the foreclosures, saying the fraud that's being committed here. We've been contacted by FBI, retired, Deputy U.S. Marshals, retired, and other law enforcement that have been tired on the federal government side, that is going back in and seeing the lies, the deception, the misleading that they have been taught and mistaught on their job, and they're starting to realize, and they're wanting to expose this and bring this out to the public of what they have been lied to about on their side of the fence. And ladies, this is what is significant about this, is that when we started this program and we started getting in and researching the Congressional Records, the amount of knowledge that we have been pulling has really went out across. And the biggest thing is that we're handing this information out.
Yes.
We're not in here for Patriot for profits. We're not in here charging high dollars for public paperwork. That is, all you got to do is go down to the law library and pull it out yourself. Mm-hmm. And the people that's coming forward, the one gentleman that dealt with in Tennessee was incarcerated for a period of time, went back and did some research because he contacted me here about a year ago. I got in him on the administrative side. He started researching, and he got into the charter of what we was under the impression at that time was the United States of America. He pulled the charter, and it was the United States Service of America, Inc. Then it went belly up, went to the United States of America, Inc. Then it went belly up and went back to the United States Service of America, Inc. The USA, the problem of it is, we, the people, have not been told that we have changed the name from the United States of America to United Service of America, Inc. We have not been told. This man has got the proof.
He has the proof. Black ink on white paper with the chain of evidence. He really does.
He pulled it from the Secretary of State that sent him the paperwork, because when he went back and checked his credit report from sitting in jail, he started questioning, and he went through and actually said here and can prove we're not dealing with the United States of America. We are dealing with the United Service of America Incorporated. We have lost the United States to a service. And he has got the proof and the evidence of what he has done for the research on it. And this is what we're saying, this is what we're coming across with people. The hardest thing that we're having problems with the people is their understanding. You can sit back and say, well, we know the Federal Reserve note is not money. But, you know, I had to pay county taxes here this month. You know, then they'll admit, well, wait a minute, what are they charging your taxes on? Well, didn't we talk about the Federal Reserve note not being money?
That's right.
Did we not talk about trading with the Enemy Act, that everything is owned by the state?
Conscripted by the state for the war effort. You know, that's the thing that's really getting to me. It was through the War Powers Act of 1917. They are plainly telling us ahead of time that they have conscripted all of our property to pay for the War Act. And then as a result of that conscription, they're supposed to be promising to pay all of the debts of the American people, because they have the opportunity through the Trading with the Enemy Act, the War Powers Act, they have the opportunity through the custodian of the records to put a lien on our property, to put a to borrow, so that they're having to get the interest and all of the other things. You know, there's money out there in many different ways, and everybody says, oh, you can't prove that. Oh, yes, we can. It's right there in the records. So what we're beginning to do is to realize how many ways this money, this I don't want to call it money because it's debits and credits on a balance sheet. We think it's money. We have been told it's money, but it's debits and credits on a balance sheet. And when this veteran who came back after being 7 years incarcerated for nothing, you know, was not a legal and lawful offense, and he can prove all of that he was put in jail for the 7 years. Then during that time, 60 days after he was incarcerated, they had to turn in a certificate to the Veterans Administration saying that he had to, that all of the money that came in for him for his veteran's disability now, that should have been going to his family during this time that he was incarcerated, they stole that money and didn't let they absolutely took it away and said, oh, taxpayers, have to pay this money. We can't do that. Well, then his family was left without those resources during that whole time he was incarcerated. So you take his veterans pay, 3,000 times 84 months, and you figure out how much that has been stolen from his family. And then the second part of it was, then on top of that, they took the credits from his case, however they did that, they put a mortgage against him. Now, he's never had a mortgage on a home in his life. So it was not the mortgage that you're normally used to when you think of a home mortgage or something like that. But that mortgage showed up on the record. So he did his due diligence. He said, okay, who are you? Who is coming after me? He went through the credit report. He's learning how to do the investigative evidence on this. And so he wrote to the credit bureau and said, who's charged me with this mortgage? What's going on here? I was in jail during this time. What's going on here? And he went back, and they tied it in to the court who had convicted him, to the court in Tennessee that was responsible for this. So now he's gone after from a Freedom of Information Act and everything else to get to the bottom of this. And of course he's, being stymied every which way, but he's been able to get such a trail of evidence. So tell me it's not the money. Tell me he's not.
Well, see, the thing of it is this. Anybody that's on Social Security or disability that goes to the government, if you get incarcerated, you lose that because they don't pay you your disability while they are putting you in jail. Now, wait a minute. Stop and think here what we're saying, because this is what I asked him. Yeah. I says, okay, before you went to jail, was the prison collecting federal funding while you were collecting your VA check? The answer was yes.
Yeah.
So if they were collecting federal funding while he was collecting his VA check, then what this means is that now that he is out free, they got to quit federal funding the county and federal prisons because he's not sitting in jail now.
Right.
This is what we're getting into, ladies and gentlemen. They're double dipping, and this is what this War Powers Act is all about. This is what we're getting into, because once you understand that when they did the Trading with the Enemy Act, they come in, like Rebecca said, they took our property. They took it. We are going to borrow this. We're going to borrow credit off of this. So what we're doing is basically, I'm coming to Rebecca and says, hey, I need to borrow $1 billion off of you. Yep. I need to run your credit line.
Yep.
So I need to borrow off you. Oh, by the way, I'm now going to charge you taxes for me borrowing money off of you.
My property.
And using your credit line,
yep.
I'm now going to charge you taxes and sit down and make you pay interest on the money that I borrowed off of your credit. This is what they're doing to us, ladies and gentlemen. The thing is, once you understand that the reason for the licensing, this is what's important here.
Yes.
Once you understand the driver's license, the marriage license, all these different licenses, the registration, what this is, if we had a government, and we're talking a legitimate government.
Not a de facto corporation, but a government.
A real government.
What we thought we had.
Yeah. When they pull you over, they say, okay, you've got a state of North Carolina registration, you got a tag, you got a driver's license. Okay, you are free to leave because we are using your credit line. So we have no reason to justify stopping you because we're taking your credit and we're using it. That's the purpose of a license, because if you go back and look up the definition of the word license, a license means it gives you permission to do something that you would legally not be allowed to do if you did not have a license. So because I have a license, what this means, and everything's registered, they have to discharge my debt. They have to give me a clean record. They can't hold me accountable for any crime because we are licensed and we are legally allowed to do whatever we want to do with that license. But if we had the government, this is how it would work. But what we're dealing with is a de facto. What we're dealing with is a corporation that we now have been made an enemy of their corporation. This license, it does not go through them. This is what Dwight gets in and explains. This is my brother. This driver's license that you have goes through a private organization, a private de facto. When you take that driver's license on the corporation side, you waive all your constitutional rights, you waive all the federal statutes, you waive all your immunities on the de facto side of this thing. Well, this is what they're doing here is they're using the public office on the government side to get the federal funding to sucker you into that driver's license side so they can borrow.
So you also can't be a republic.
That's right.
The republic is there. It's just unoccupied by any because we're all in a corporation.
That's exactly right. So they sucker you in under the Trade with the Enemy Act to get you to take the license, take the registration, so they can borrow against you. But now what they're doing on the corporation side is because we're not in a war, because remember, this stuff was given for a war effort.
For the war effort. This was World War I. World War I.
Where there was still a currency that was not fiat.
Yes.
Yes.
It was gold backed or silver backed. There was still multiple types of circulation of many different currencies still. Greenbacks were still in existence and still being taken in and cashed out.
And people had their gold.
People
were able to use the
foreign
gold
money
and
too.
silver. Yes, they were able to use the gold and silver. They were able to have other means of currency because we had not completely established.
Like in the miners' courts, they didn't use coins; they used nuggets or gold powder.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when they did this Trade with the Enemy Act, they went to the corporation side. They have embezzled. So what they're doing, instead of paying for the war effort, these judges, these courts, these lawyers, these law, and this is where the problem's coming in, is with the law firm, is that the Bar Association is in every single state and they're organized. These are the people that set the standard for the next level because they go to the judges, they go to the lawyers, they go to the attorney, says, okay, our next level of how to swindle people is this is what we're going to do next. So when they come into your courtroom, this is how you handle them. Now the thing of it is, Rebecca's going to read tomorrow Edward Mendelhaus speech, 1913. Now, wait a minute. That was 100 years ago. That's exactly right. Yeah. Edward Mendelhaus, 100 years ago, told Woodrow Wilson what they were going to do to the American people in this country, and the American people would never know what happened to them, or what was going to be done to them. And by the time they would figure it out 100 years later, and that's where we're at today,
exactly
100 years later, it would be the plausible deniability on their side. This is his speech.
He understood that each generation reinterprets the law and reinterprets the law and reinterprets the law. We have 3 generations. The first was still that the republic may exist.
Yep.
The second, well, it doesn't exist anymore. All we got is this corporation and what's left of a sovereign movement. And what's here now is all corporation and a micro few in the sovereign movement.
Yeah.
And this,
barely a memory
of
amnesia.
And this is what we're sitting here talking about. So when they went to the corporation side, they embezzled the federal funding.
Set it up ahead of time.
Set
it up through the Social Security Act, through the Alien Registration Act, where we became the aliens in 1940, and then set it up in 1945 so they could steal it through the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. You know, it's so clear when you really get in there and start going back to the research and doing the research through the Congressional Record, through the various acts and treaties that were passed, and getting in there and really understanding exactly how they pulled this off on us without us noticing. And you go back in and you research and you realize that the nurses who had to do the birth certificates, for instance, they were paid a bonus for every time they got everybody to do it, until here we were, gullible people, we just accepted all of these registrations without giving it any thought, without questioning.
Because your mother did it, and your
That's
mother
exactly
before her
right.
did it. It was
Everybody,
tradition.
and then by doing the same thing that so many people are guilty of, our government wouldn't do that to us. Guess what?
And if you think the government won't lie, Gulf of Tonkin.
Yes.
See, this is where the Bar Association is nationwide. They're worldwide. They set this thing up. So each group that comes in takes on the next step, the next level. This is why the State Justice Institute was created. This is why the Federal Judicial Center was created. So when they had issues that come into court, they would call me 3-4 times a year, says, okay, this is the new game plan. This is the new setup. This is how you're going to run your courts. This is how it's going to work. So when these people come in, this is how you're going to rule against them. If they fight you, this is how the appeals court's going to work. This is how the Supreme Court's going to work. We're not going to give them remedy. We're not going to give them the ability. We got to let a few win once in a while to make it look like we got some type of legitimacy here.
3%. 97% mean people go to jail.
That's exactly right. And see, this is where the organization on their side, this is how they're beating us in these courtrooms.
Yeah, because you can't win on appeal. They're saying to the judges and the prosecutors, now you go ahead and do your dirty work and we'll back you up. There's no way that we're going to let these people, especially these pro se's and these sovereign citizens, these paper terrorists, especially the ones who put Rod Class's paperwork in.
Exactly.
Or when Rod Class refers to himself in his own paperwork. Amazing.
But this is what is happening. We're not winning on appeal. We're not getting anywhere in the courts. I don't care whether it's foreclosure. I don't care whether it's child support. I don't care whether it's a simple traffic ticket. We're getting so much evidence at this point in time of exactly how each person who has to go before a court is getting railroaded. So it's just almost more than I can handle from the standpoint of how much I've come to understand the level of corruption that we're dealing with in our just system, whatever it's called.
But see, this is the thing, and they want to discourage you on this level. And this is where we cannot allow them to discourage us. We cannot allow them to browbeat us. We cannot allow them to put us down. We have to keep fighting the fight, because what we've done now over the several years that we have done this, we've come a long ways on exposing what we're exposing.
Absolutely understanding it down to the point where we can begin to speak it with such clarity that most everybody hearing us can now begin to really understand what we're talking about.
Absolutely. For the layman's out there, this isn't hard to understand. As Rob was saying, 100 years ago this has started. Yeah. And the whole point was social engineering of the courts so that honorable people ultimately became dishonorable people. From all those people that file any kind of paperwork and have any paperwork throw out, your judge is dishonorable. And when they dishonor the robe, they dishonor a constitution. And when they dishonor a constitution in the ways that they've had over the last 100 years, it is our job as a private attorney general and as an individual person that's saying, no, you do not get to take my rights. Officer who's asking me for my ID, here's my ID. It's the press pass. That's all you need to see. That's it.
Yeah.
It's all you need to see. Are you arresting me? Who are you? Where's your oath? Where's your bond? If people begin to learn some of those common words, we, the people, can put the fear into the costume villains.
And see, this is what's important here, because what we know for a fact is that judges and lawyers and law enforcement live out here among us.
That's right.
Because out here at the park, we've already seen police cruisers of people that is sitting out there who live out in this park already. Coming up from Lincolnton, up 150, I've already seen a couple houses where police officers live at. So this is not a process. They live in the fifth dimension where they beam in and beam out. Well, they don't live among us. They do live among us. Mm-hmm. And this is the point. The more the people start understanding what's going on. Now, a lot of the law enforcement officers, I have a lot of respect for these guys because they do risk their lives out here.
Every day.
But on the other hand, some of them push the envelope because they know the corruption.
Or their quota is so high, the only way they can become is when they lose their heart and their honor.
And this is why, with what we're finding out, because since I've done my broadcast on TalkShoe.com, since we started this broadcast, I have had more retired FBI, more retired U.S. Marshals, more retired military, more retired public officials come to me, lawyers sitting here saying, where are you getting this knowledge? And they're going back in and they're realizing what we're saying is they've been lied to by the system.
Mm-hmm. For three generations.
Yeah, they've been lied to. But part of the problem of it is, well, I had a job to do and I need to feed my family and I got to sit down and pay my bill. That is no excuse.
No excuse for doing your civil duty to the Constitution, not a corporation.
And that's it. And see, this is what we have proven here, because I've had a chance to talk with several different people out here just briefly. And once we started breaking down the administrative court hearings, is that when you have an issue with any agency, now stop and think here, it is never a private party that ever brings charges against you.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's always state of, or it's in
an agency.
Yeah, it's an agency.
It's always an agency or an employee of an agency. What we have been doing here in North Carolina is, I found the secret here several years ago, is that we found the administrative court. What we're doing is we're coming in and challenging the administration side of misconduct. The Attorney General is coming back into the administrative court saying, we want this case dismissed on 12b-6 because this court lacks subject matter jurisdiction, because these are not agencies of the state, and therefore it has no subject matter over non-agencies. Now, wait a minute. Stop. Hold. Time out.
Yep. Just admitted.
Yep.
Time out. Wait a minute. They are coming in saying the state of, I am a state police, I am a sheriff, I am a police officer, I am a public official, and now you're telling me that they're not part of the state?
In this administrative court with your own administrative rules that has been there for 3 generations, waiting for us to inherit that legacy to straighten out the corruption.
Yep.
And they're coming back in and saying, so that the administrative court is now coming back in and saying, we lack subject matter over these public officials because they're not part of the system.
So does that not mean that they lack subject matter over we, the people?
Exactly right.
It means
that's where the International Tribunal on Natural Justice brings enforcement at that level.
And this is what we're going into. With me successfully doing 4 administrative cases, an administrative hearing, and 2 in a judicial review, getting the court to come back and rule that they have no subject matter over any of these administrations. This creates a problem here. Now, on this last case, we went after the governor's office because this is part of North Carolina General Statutes 150B, Article 3. If you have any problem with an agency or any of its employees, you have to contact the agency in charge of. All right, well, who's in charge of the state?
Yeah.
The governor. He's the head of all administrative agencies. Who gets the federal funding for these agencies? The governor. The Attorney General is the second one, because he's the legal advisor for all this. Mm-hmm. Then you got your individual agencies, and then you got your agencies underneath these agencies with employees working. So when we went after the governor, because he's the head administrator, he's the top dog that we had to go through because we're doing state highway patrol. The Attorney General is supposed to be the one who's supposed to be representing the state office, the State Highway Patrol. Mm-hmm. The Department of Transportation is the public safety department that gives the orders to the State Highway Patrol. These were the main agencies in the State Highway Patrol. So we contacted the 4 agencies. The administrative court came back and said, we don't have subject matter jurisdiction, 12b-6. You failed to state a claim on how relief can be granted because we don't have jurisdiction over these people. Okay, now wait a minute. Stop. Hold the phone. Let's talk about this for a minute. Now you're telling me that the governor's office is not an administrative agency. Well, that's exactly right. Then who appointed the administrative judge?
Yeah.
Who appointed the administrative judge? Good question.
Okay.
That's why a tribunal can do what? Bring people in front of them and ask, why doesn't the Constitution apply to you or your court?
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about here, again, ladies and gentlemen, I talked to several different people out here, and they got court cases. And I told them they want to cross-examine a police officer. I said, you have to subpoena that police officer. You can't cross-examine him on the subpoena from the government. You can only redirect questions. You have to come back in and subpoena them. So what you do is you go back in, you subpoena the governor. Look, even if it's on the county level, you subpoena the governor because he's the head of the administrator. Why? Because he's the one that signs the check for the county court to get federal funding and state funding. He is the guy that does the financing. His signature.
His signature goes on the check.
Okay.
Yes, the Attorney General.
And according to Section 7 of this War Powers Act, it says in no uncertain terms that there is not supposed to be any debt brought before the court because it's supposed to be settled.
Discharged.
Yes, it is supposed to be discharged. So, okay, in this particular situation now, you've got the executive branch and you've got the administrative agencies who are supposedly acting under the executive. So if they're coming back in, how are they getting to the federal funding in this particular situation? Because they're saying, okay, several of the rulings said very plainly that they are not under the executive branch of government, so therefore they can't handle the constitutional side. We know they're under the administrative. What are they saying in this last ruling that you got? Where are they? Where is their location?
Well, that's the whole thing. They're leaving them out hanging because you got 3 branches of government. Now let's go through the 3 branches of government. You got legislation. Legislation creates the law. They're not part of the judicial. They're not part of the executive branch. The judicial branch is determined whether the laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. That right there is the key thing here. Is a law constitutional or unconstitutional? They are not supposed to be making legal determinations on the bench other than legal or not legal.
Whether or not it fits within the constitutional framework that's supposed to be set.
Though every law is unconstitutional because you have bar lawyers in the Congress, therefore we can actually say that every single law that is in existence now is null and void.
Exactly.
One other thing. I would like people to look up the Salem witch trials, the truth about them. They were hanging bar attorneys, not witches.
Yeah, they burned them.
Yep, that was bar attorneys.
That's why they call them bars. That's barbecue.
That's the truth behind the witch trials. Because they were doing what? Stealing everything.
Exactly right. But see, then, like I said, but getting in, you get your legislative branch, you get your judicial branch, and the executive branch. All administrative agencies come under the executive branch because they are administrative offices, administrative duties. Now, problem of it is law enforcement is an administrative action, not legislative and not judicial. When they come out, they're playing judicial and legislative out on the street, and they're not supposed to. All they're supposed to do is come out and say, have a good day, talk to you a little bit, and then sit down and give you a summons. Says, here, my administrative job is to serve you, not sit down and convict you out on the street, not find you guilty out on the street.
It's to come with you honor, not dishonor, and to issue a summons so you honorably appear in a court that has an honorable judge that will hear your case based off of your knowledge. Whether you have somebody helping you represent or not doesn't matter. It comes from honor. Honor in the court, honor in the person.
And that's what we had. in our court system for many, many years. We can all go back. I mean, even 50 years, we had an honorable court system pretty much in the United States. There was corruption, but for the most part, we the people are still believing that we have honorable courts. I mean, unless you have actually been into a court situation, we're really believing that we have honorable situations until you get before a judge, or you're helping a family member, or you have some experience that lets you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that no, we're not dealing with people who any longer have honor and integrity, because first of all, their hands are unclean. That means that they're using the system to steal what was supposed to be coming to pay our debts off. This debits and credits. If you had a debt, it's supposed to be discharged. It's supposed to be zeroed out. When we have double entry bookkeeping, you've got one amount over here and the same amount over here, and it's supposed to equal zero when that claim has been settled. Well, instead of settling that claim, they're putting this amount over here and then taking it here and then coming over in this third column and saying you had this debt that you haven't paid, and therefore, we're going to go ahead and take that money, but you're going to have to pay it back, kind of like they're doing with the mortgage foreclosures. So we're really dealing with a lot of smoke and mirrors here that we have just accepted without asking enough questions.
Okay, but going back to what you're sitting here saying, this is what I
Okay.
proved down in Lincolnton with the sheriff department. Okay, we went in, we pulled their legislative duties for a sheriff department.
Right. Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
now, what we went
Lay it
in
out.
on the administrative side. Now, this is administrative, not law enforcement, administrative. Their duties were to control the jail administratively, do their part. They were to serve the paperwork, whether it be a warrant, whether it would be for foreclosure, or some issue, some document from the judge.
Mm-hmm.
It was an administrative duty to serve. The other side was the administrative of administrating the peace and tranquility in a courtroom as a bailiff. Okay, now wait a minute. What did I leave out here? Because we talked about the bailiff, we talked about serving, we talked about the jail.
There's nobody supposed to be a bandit out on the highway.
That is exactly right. There is no law enforcement of them making determinations of what the law is out on the road. This is where we're having issues. So they are crossing their executive administrative side over to the judicial and legislative side, where they are determining the law and they're making judgment out on the road, and they're dragging you in. Problem of it is, where is the victim for them to come out or even to stop you? Who was the victim? There's never a victim.
Okay, but what they're doing under this War Powers Act, they're taking that license and registration that
Yep.
we are having, that they're saying, okay, because you've broken this little rule here, here we have all these rules that we're putting in place, and you've broken the rule by going 5 miles over the speed limit or whatever it is, then they're saying, oh, you're a war criminal. Now we can charge you as a criminal because you have disturbed the peace. You've gone 5 miles over the speed limit, so you haven't created any injury against anybody in any way, shape, or form, but you're a war criminal because you're breaking a rule. And if you're breaking a rule, you're supposed to obey all these rules, and therefore, because you break a little rule here that we say on our books, then we're going to haul you in as a criminal in these courts, and then guess what? You do not have any more rights or remedy. We're going to be able to take all this property that we're supposed to be managing over here for you
No, we can embezzle.
to pay those debts. We're supposed to do that. Well, guess what? If you're a war criminal, we can confiscate every bit of your property, and there ain't a thing you can do about it. So we're going in and we're confiscating that property, and we're going to claim it for ourselves and take it and then run all this paperwork. We can create insurance claims every time you're drawn
Yep.
into a court case on a simple 5 miles over the speed limit traffic ticket, then what's happening is they're taking your credit stream here, because you're a war crime, you've really committed something that's a serious offense. You're an enemy of the state, you're a war criminal, and you are going to be able to turn insurance money over to them. You're going to have a court bond. What are the bid bonds and the performance bonds, and what's that other one? I can't ever remember the third. There's 3 different ones. They're going to take this and create bonds. Now, what's a bond? If you go in and you have bonds, you're going to be getting interest on that. Who gets that interest? Do you ever see any of that interest?
Okay, now wait a minute. Now, who creates the bond? It goes right back to the corporation's own insurance company,
right,
that is creating its own bond for it to cash for itself at its own interest.
Yeah, because they have control. They're the fiduciary. You don't ever have any control of that. You don't have any obligation. You don't have any duty. You don't have anything to do with it. So how do you get brought in and charged under commerce like this?
Well, see, this is where the problem's coming in. And the thing is, we have been dumbed down throughout the years through all this stuff. We're now starting to wake up on this stuff. And this is where the people need to start hammering the system on bringing in. You've got to be able to walk. And this is one of the things that we've talked about here, because I've had people sit down and say, Rod, what's it take? I said, look, you need to go back in and read their paperwork. Understand what they're saying.
And
read
it's
their
not
law.
really as complicated.
No.
It's not complicated. We're convinced that it's too complicated for us to learn. But as Rod teaches so carefully, and he will be teaching in the seminar tomorrow, the answer is in the paperwork. And it's not that complicated because it's right in there. They're going to tell you what statutes and codes and everything that you're being charged under. And you can go back in and you can do your research. And as you get more experience, as you dare to stand up and do what needs to be done here, you start learning things, and it's really not that complicated.
No, it's not. It's like with Dwight and I. We was in Ohio. And that's what I just got done with the sheriff department here in North Carolina. They have 3 job duties. They're to be a bailiff. They are a paper server. They are to sit down and they are to work with the jail system. They don't have the authority to sit down and arrest out on the street. When we did this in Ohio, we went back on the state highway patrol. The state highway patrol in Ohio, they come under the governor's office. They are the governor's task force. Their job is to work on state property. State property means state mental institutions, state prisons, state parks. All right? The state highway patrol under the governor's office is his fetch boys. Go fetch. We got a problem with the judge in this county. Go fetch and bring him back. We got a problem with the mayor. Go fetch, bring him back. They are his fetch boys. They are to go get public officials to bring them down to the governor's office because we file a complaint and for them to investigate. They're not supposed to be out on the highway unless they're working with the feds on hijacking international incidents. They're not supposed to be pulling traffic stops on the.
So how do we get to be under hijacking this? How are they hijacking us like this?
Well, they're hijacking us because they're coming in stealing our stuff. We're being hijacked by them.
Being hijacked.
And
yes.
see, this is what we're sitting here saying. When you can go back in and do the research, and this is what I ran into in Lincolnton when I had my blue light in my Jeep. I put it in there to push the buttons with these people. We got hauled in. The prosecutor sat here and said, Your Honor, Mr. Class had a blue light in his Jeep. It was not a manufacturer original equipment. Wait a minute. Manufacturer original equipment. That's what the law says.
None of theirs are either.
That's what we come back and say, I object. Just we objected to. I said, I could take you down and I could show you on their sticker is that they have a private contractor putting their blue lights and their stickers and their sirens in their cars, so their car doesn't come from the manufacturer either. So now they're impersonating. Well, we're going to skip that part of the law. Wait a minute. See, this is what I'm sitting here saying. When you start getting back in and learning, you can pick their stuff apart and you can tear them apart in that courtroom.
Because their expectation is your ignorance.
Yes, and when we went in and I laid out the duties of the sheriff's department, he sat down and says, well, Mr. Class, you're not North Carolina law enforcement, so you can't have a blue light.
It's very simple. It's my sandbox, get out.
Yes. But the point is, I proved that the police officers can't have a blue light because it didn't come from the dealer with the blue light. I had to have it put on. I proved they don't have any authority to arrest out on the street, so they're not really law enforcement. So the only thing he could nail me for is, well, you're not North Carolina law enforcement. Well, I discovered who is not. And the sheriff's department is not North Carolina law enforcement.
Who is North Carolina law enforcement?
There is no North Carolina law enforcement because we've already proved that the city police between Mecklenburg and Dallas, North Carolina, I've got rulings that they are private contractors. I got private contractors on the sheriff's department from the administrative court. I just got a ruling that the State Highway Patrol is not an agency of the state under the governor's office. They don't work here. So there is no law enforcement in North Carolina.
So people out there that are current police officers, you have been thrown to the wolves by your own attorney general. How much longer before 50 or 100 or 200 of your brothers are thrown to the wolves by a corporate cannibal system? You know it's corporate. You know it's cannibalistic. When are you going to act in honor and stand up and say no?
And you know, I have to tell you, we met some a couple of weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was an accident, and we had occasion to deal with 2 people in our local community. They do live in our local community. Yeah. They were extremely, they went out of their way to not do any of these things. Now, I have met some that are so aggressive that, you know, I don't ever want to have anything to do with those people again. But these people who were part of our community, they started doing everything they could to give us a break because they're beginning to understand. And I think that there are a growing number, perhaps, who are beginning to say this, you know, it doesn't feel right for me to be able to give a ticket to this family member here, you know, that this community member that I know for $800 fine when I know they don't have that $800 fine.
Their children are going to starve.
Their children are going to starve, and it's a violation because it's an insurance card. They're telling me they have that insurance card. You know, there are things that can be done in situations like that instead of just giving in to the system. So, you know, we're all in this together. And as everybody begins to think about this and have the opportunity to realize that what we're being accused of here is our paper terrorist kind of thing, is because we're really learning the truth. And the State Justice Institute and these other people don't want us to get this word out to the people who are having to deal with it. And by that I mean the people who have the jobs that are on the line here, dealing with their own communities and the family members and everything that they have to be held accountable to, just like the judges and the prosecutors have to be held accountable to when it's an unfair system all the way around. All of us are really going to have to look at this and realize our silence is just as much, you know, if we just don't do anything and if we just stand by and let all of this happen, then we are as guilty as the person who is acting as the actor out on the highways who is being the bandit. If we don't hold them accountable, who is? And if we don't start learning the rules and the laws and learning to read this paperwork, like when Rod was dealing with this blue light, it was in his paperwork. You know, there were such certain little statutes and things that he could look up and realize what those statutes were so that he could go back in and say, no, wait a minute, the policemen don't have this in their vehicle either. So there are ways that you can begin to learn to hold them accountable. But now when we have 3% wins as a pro se litigant, What else are we going to do?
Well, see, this is where the problem's coming in, and we don't want to give the audience a misconception here that there's no laws, we're not abiding by the laws, or we're sovereigns. Dwight and I, when we dealt with FBI, and they started going back and checking our work here, they come back and say, you guys are trying to hold the system to the same accountability.
Exactly.
Yep.
As what they're trying to hold you. You're not a paper terrorism. You're not coming in as a sovereign. You're not coming in as,
a vengeful soul.
Yeah, you're coming in saying, hey, these are your rules. These are your regulations. You are to be held accountable to the same standard that you're trying to hold us to on this.
So we can all play in the sandbox equally.
Exactly. Nobody is supposed to have more sand or more toys than the other one. Because the bottom line is the sand's mine, the toy's mine. And if you have a problem, if you think for 1 minute it don't belong to me, let you and I walk down to the election board and let's see who asked for the job. Because I didn't ask for it. And if I am an enemy of the state, now wait a minute.
An enemy of the sandbox.
That too. If I am an enemy in the sandbox and I'm an enemy of the state, then how can I possibly put you in office on election day if I am considered an enemy and an incompetent
enemy
when it comes to election? Then that means I was incompetent to put you in office, so you don't need to be put in office.
That's right. Therefore, everything's once again null and void.
So this is what we're getting into, people.
And if you're an enemy of the state, if you're incarcerated, your voting privilege, and that's a word that we really need to remember, it's been revoked. So how come we, if we're enemy of the state, then how come we can vote?
That right there is what we got to get the people to understand the concept of.
Yep.
This is like we're sitting here talking about, well, we know the Federal Reserve note is not money. If you know and you really truly understand that it's not money, then how are you being taxed on something that you do not have? Well, it's theirs. No, it's not there. Now stop and think here a minute, people. Becky, I need your signature here.
Yep. And what are you going to do with it?
I'm going to create Federal Reserve notes out of your signature. Now I'm going to turn around and tax you for your signature for creating Federal Reserve notes on your credit line.
7% for every dollar.
Now the bottom line is I'm using your effort, your credit,
and my
your
signature.
I'm creating Federal Reserve notes off for you. Now how am I charging you taxes for me borrowing off of you?
And
he's charging you $1.07 so you can make $1. So you can never get out of debt.
Never get out of debt.
And see, this is what we got to understand, is that they are borrowing off of us.
Ours is the value. That is the most important thing that the OPPT paperwork proved beyond the shadow of a doubt. As they went in there and said, okay, first of all, we find the exact corporation who is the central international parent corporation here. And we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this group of people, this private owners now of this corporation, we have traced it down through the money system so that we can find who is at the top of this food chain, who is the one who is holding all of us hostage here.
All right.
The slavery contracts, bringing all of this in so that we understand that it's our value that has been taken from us and used by these private owners of these corporations.
Okay, we've had the Credit River decision.
Yes, way back.
Out of Minnesota,
Yep.
where they came in, the lawyer on a foreclosure brought the bank in, and the bank admitted that they did not have the finances, that they used the credit of the attorney, used his signature to generate revenue.
Hear that? They used the attorney's signature. They made a sandbox.
Yep.
They took the attorney's sand and then put you in their sandbox.
They took his signature, and this was on a court record, and shortly afterward, the judge got assassinated. The Walker Todd case out of Asheville.
Asheville, North
This
Carolina.
was a Secret Service agent that was in the Federal Reserve side of this thing, walked in and testified on the witness stand that there is no money.
And this was a really important case because you had people who were understanding how to utilize that credit, and they were trying to put them in jail and do everything. You know, they used a closed checking account is what that
Yep.
Walter Todd case was all about. And so they were trying to railroad this couple. There were actually 3 people involved. And they were trying to get them because they didn't want people finding out the information and the evidence. And I don't remember how this FBI agent came in there to testify.
He was subpoenaed in.
Okay, he was subpoenaed in. And the testimony that he gave in that particular case just absolutely proved beyond a shadow of a doubt. You know, this debits and credits and kinds of things, because they wrote checks on a closed bank account, and they didn't go to jail for it because the FBI agent came in there and proved debits, credits, 0. That's the whole purpose of double entry bookkeeping, so that you begin to really get these cases like this, and you can begin to have to see that all of this smoke and mirrors, these mortgages and these promissory notes and everything that they are utilizing to steal the people's home is pure smoke and mirrors, and we're the ones who bought it. You know, we have.
That goes
They've
back to
gotten
that
away
Edward
with
Mendel
it.
House
Yeah.
speech. He told then at that
Yeah.
time, because he's one that helped appointed Woodrow Wilson. He's one that helped put the Federal Reserve Board, and he laid out on how they were going to do this to the people in 1913 behind closed doors, and they have ran it through to 2014. 100 years later, what he stated then has come into focus over the last 100 years.
And that the biggest part that I remember about that is that the people would lose their lands and their homes, and they'd never know what happened to them.
They wouldn't know why, because they was under an assumed mortgage.
Now you know
Yeah.
why the League of Nations really failed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because if it would have came in place, none of this corporate country status would have happened. 253 corporate nations in our world.
So a big part of this seminar now, once everybody really, really, really gets down to the point where they understand what's been going on within the court system and within our country, you know, what we have accepted, government all by and for the people, when we really understand, we are the ones who are responsible for government all by and for the people. So what are we going to do to bring this back into balance so that we can live in peace and prosperity, and we can make sure that our families and the generations to come, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, how are we going to be the generation who brings this back into balance? And so part of what Rod is going to be teaching and what Carl and Dwight will be teaching in this seminar tomorrow is how we begin to come back into balance and hold these people accountable to the rule of law. And there are several things that y'all are going to be covering that are going to be really, really important, and a lot of the people who are coming to this seminar want to understand exactly how to do these tort claims. So tell us a little bit about exactly how.
We've got about 10 minutes left in the show, and then we have another BBS radio show tonight. Mm-hmm. So why don't we give a quick overview of what's coming on, and with people, we will be recording the seminar, and it will be available afterwards. Mm-hmm. So please keep an eye on Rod Class's website, as well as newearthnation.org, as well as newearthnation.org, New Earth Nation's Facebook page. And we want to say there's an incredible amount of things coming.
Yes, and so the whole thing that we're saying here is that if you're one of these people who really understands, you've got a child support enforcement, you've got a foreclosure, you've got traffic tickets, you've got, you know, whatever the issues that you're dealing with, what we're going to be doing over the course of this seminar is literally teaching these. I counted it up yesterday as I was talking with Rod and Carl and Dwight, and they have almost, 60 years between you almost, with the decades of experience that they're going to be bringing. And I know that Carl is going to be teaching the plaintiff's side on the Title 42 tort claim, so that as you really get this fraud and where it's going, You can come back in and do your own investigation and find a way to hold the people accountable. Dwight's going to be teaching the SF-95.
He's going to be teaching on the SF-95. He's going to be teaching on how Ohio was never a state, how it went to the corporation side because it was not the people that made Ohio a state. It was already the Bar Association. Those who had public office created a private bill under HJR 121.
Private bill.
Private bill.
And yes, you can still pass private bills.
Yeah, they took it into Washington, D.C., and had the legislation allow Ohio to become a state in that 10-mile square.
Yes, now that's the biggest deal, the 10-mile square, which is the city of Washington. So that we're really dealing with, at the top of this chain when we found the international bankers, we've got the city of Washington, who has nothing to do with the United States government. It is a private corporation owned by private citizens, by a private group of people who is dealing with this corporation at the top. You got the city of Washington, you got the city of London, and the city of Rome tied into this. So we are dealing with something that is far beyond our understanding almost on all of this.
Well, yeah, because see, what we, us, individuals, what we're doing here, we think this is a local issue.
Yeah.
It's national.
It's national. It's international.
The country of Australia, its corporate title is in the embassy in Washington, D.C. What does that tell you?
See, this is where we, the people, us, we're thinking that we're dealing with just a local level problem here, and we're trying to handle it. And through the years of research of what Dwight's done, what I've done on this, and the digging that we got in, the farther we got in, we started realizing this is not the city. It's not downtown New Philadelphia.
It's not the United States government.
Yeah, it's not the county of Tuscarawas County. Because when we had the federal representative from Bob Ney to come down and talk to us, when we laid out the paperwork, they sit here and said, my God, you guys are sitting enough to shut down the city and shut down the state. And the other one says, no, they're sitting on enough to shut down the entire country for fraud.
That's right.
So when we found this out, we thought this was a local corruption with the judge, with the cops. This was local kickbacks.
Yeah.
Well, the more we got into it, we found it's national. It goes across this country. So the people, this is not, well, we have the most, no, it's equally across this country for corruption. This is not a local centralized just in our town.
Right.
It is entirely the system, and what we're bringing out on the Trading with the Enemy Act is not local, it's national. But the problem of it is, it's international, because when they started handing Federal Reserve notes to China, and they started handing Federal Reserve notes to Russia, and they're handing Federal Reserve notes to all of these other foreign countries, they made them enemies of that 10-mile square because they accepted the Federal Reserve note as money. And McFadden clearly sits here and says they have to use gold when they're dealing with foreign international people.
Now you know why Libya, Iraq, and Iran, and Afghanistan that don't have central banks that still use gold are not wanted in a 253 corporate nation world.
This is why the United States is over there creating chaos in their country.
Absolutely.
To get them to collapse in order to put the Federal Reserve site into this.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the reason why we're overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So the big part, though, of what we're going to be talking about, and the thing that will be of interest to any of you who are dealing with the paperwork and having to deal with courts and everything, we're really going to be creating solutions so that you can learn how to solve these issues yourself, because you can't depend on the lawyers. And if you learn this just very, very quickly as you go through, you have to learn how to do this yourself. And so a lot of the people who are here for the seminar are here to learn these tools that Carl and Rod and Dwight, between them, will be teaching. So that's the most important thing that I want you to take away from here, of what we'll be covering the rest of this seminar, that will be just solid teaching, so that you'll be able to take what they have spent all of these years learning and be able to take this and utilize it for those things that you need for yourself, as well as this knowledge stage. Because let me tell you something, the problems came about because we weren't paying enough attention, and it's going to be up to the people themselves to start handling our own responsibilities if we want a government that works of, by, and for the people, if we want to return sanity to our lives and to our law and legal professions, then it's going to be up to us. And that's a big part of what this seminar is doing for us.
I had a young lady that came down to the seminar tonight, dropped off her boyfriend. She came from Russia.
Oh, wow. We are international.
She came from Russia.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, she couldn't stay because she had to, but she sat here and we talked. And when Carl and I have been out to several of our own seminars, we've had people from Russia and we had people from Germany that sit back and says, you people, you Americans right now, today, you are going through what we did when
exactly.
Russia became a communist country. Yep. And when Hitler took over with Nazism, you people right now are so blind you can't see what's coming down the line on you people. We lived it. We had it. And we're watching it happening here right now to you people.
Draconian.
You people better wake up.
That's right. Draconians, neocons are one and the same.
And it is amazing.
The Gestapo police, I use that hard word because there are police that are just like the Gestapo.
Yep.
And you were telling about the Nuremberg trial.
Uniforms and all.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, we were talking about the tribunal. I advised Rada said, go and look at that movie. It's very important.
Judgment at Nuremberg, because it goes into the corruption between the courts. This is holding the judges accountable because they have stopped following the rule of law. And the German people were being brought in as war criminals. This movie was done in 1961. It's a Spencer Tracy movie. You can find it on Vudu and other places like that. That will set up so that you will understand what we're doing with the tribunals that we're setting up so that we have a way to hold these judges accountable before it's too late. And that's the important thing that we really want.
With that said, please join us on bbsradio.com at 8 p.m. Pacific time, bbsradio.com, as we will be continuing this conversation at a much higher level as we continue to, before the big event starts. One last word. Rod, you have anything to say before we come back on in about 2 hours?
Ladies and gentlemen, this seminar is an educational program of deprogramming your brain. That's one thing. You're going to have to be deprogrammed of what we've been taught.
Absolutely.
And once you get deprogrammed and you start understanding what is actually being said and what is being shown on the screen, because once you start reading the congressional documents, now this is something that Rod Klaus did not write out. I did not write out the Edward Mendel House speech in 1913. I was born in 1953. This is before my time.
Twinkle in your mommy's eye.
That's exactly right. My mom and dad wasn't even born at that time, so I couldn't have wrote it. But the point being of it is, this is what we're saying. When we're getting into their records, and you are starting to see this was pre-planned because we're sitting on the congressional records of 1940 Congress records saying the New World Order. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the New World Order. It isn't coming. It's here.
It's here.
It's been here. Since 1940, since 1913. It's been here. We're not coming into anything. We're in the middle of it. And we need to stop it. That's what this program is about tonight. It's education.
Yep.
Rebecca, last words?
Looking forward to sharing more with you. Just don't forget we do these New Earth Nation broadcasts every Friday with this Adventures in Sovereignty as we look at the ways that we can begin to take responsibility for our own lives and how we are going to operate so that we can bring peace and prosperity to all of us. It's up to us, and we're taking on that challenge every way we can. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hold on, Santi, just a second. I want to address some very special, specific people that are out there. Operation Spitwad is in effect. We're talking to all you out there.
And we'll tell you more about it later.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.